Hi, friends. So here's one of my biggest frustrations personally. I tend to struggle with sugar. I have in the past. And so I will decide I'm not going to eat sugar. Then something sweet will show up and I find myself eating it. And I know in my brain, I'll say to myself, I don't want to eat this. And it seems like an out of body experience. I just eat it. It's so frustrating and it feels like I'm out of control. And I hate that. There can be a lot of shame and guilt around that. That sure has been the truth for me. But I have learned a lot about our brain. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I love learning about the brain. And there's so much great information out there about how our brain works. So, for our purposes, we're going to really simplify it. There is the 2-year-old part of our brain. That's what I like to call it. And there is the executive part of our brain, or the prefrontal cortex, where we can think about our hopes and our dreams. It's where we think through problems and issues and decide what we want in our life by accessing the past and the future. And then back to that other part of our brain, the 2-year-old part of our brain. Its sole purpose is to help us to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. It just wants to keep us alive right now and keep us happy. You have experienced this, I'm sure, as I have, that when you want something, when you have an impulse, the 2-year-old part of our brain kicks in and says, you could have it now. And when it comes to things like sugar, the payoff is instant and very dependable. So that 2-year-old brain kicks in, puts a little pin in it. Oh, that's good. Let's do that again. I love calling it the 2-year-old brain because my beautiful granddaughter is 2 years old. And it's fun to watch her when she wants something, she wants it now. And she will do all kinds of things in order to get it. Luckily, she has parents with a very well developed prefrontal cortex who can help her because her prefrontal cortex is not ready for prime time yet. And so they will protect her by not letting her have what she wants in the moment. But she can throw a pretty good fit. If you've been around 2-year-olds, you know how this goes. And whenever I see that, I think, oh, that is just like my 2-year-old brain. When that part of my brain wants something, it just doesn't care about anything else, just wants it now, and it will do everything it can to keep it out of my thoughts and just have me go into action. Maybe you've experienced that too. This is not a terrible thing unless it just runs wild. And that's kind of what's happening in our society. We are in what they call a dopamine driven world. And dopamine is a hormone that's released with our 2-year-old brain with the promise of pleasure. It says you're going to have fun and it will release this hormone. And that's what drives us to action. So once we understand this, we can stop feeling shameful or guilty, and we can just start to develop some habits around it and some practices that will help us to manage it. Just as a side note, our whole social structure is designed around satisfying that impulse, that 2-year-old brain. Marketing is designed to pull us in, to seek that instant gratification, to seek pleasure and avoid pain, conserve energy. And so it feels sometimes like we're fighting a losing battle. And though we can't control our environment at large, we have a lot of power in our personal environment, in our home. And so, as we talk about this challenge of having goals and dreams and then feeling like we just can't do it because we get out of control and put the 2-year-old part of our brain in charge, I want to give you 4 things that you can try, that you can work with, that may help. The first thing is to notice your thoughts, to just identify them and don't judge them. So notice, oh, I'm having the thought that I'd really like to, you fill in the blank. What is it? And in fact, dopamine drives things like shopping or watching TV or eating or drugs or gambling. All those things are driven by this part of our brain. And so once we just identify those thoughts, it will put it into that prefrontal cortex and give us the power to analyze it and give us a chance against that impulse. The second thing is to get comfortable with discomfort. When our drive is there and we have an impulse to do something, delaying that gratification means that we're going to be a little uncomfortable. maybe a lot uncomfortable. Like sometimes I think I'm going to die if I don't eat that thing. I mean, I know I'm not, but there's something about that part of our brain that is so powerful and strong. So we have to practice just sitting with that. It doesn't always work, and don't expect it to be perfect. But even if sometimes you can sit with that and notice how it really feels in your body and how it feels to get through that to the other side, it can be a beginning to managing this impulse issue. So to notice and get comfortable with discomfort and that delayed gratification. The third thing is to really be careful about our environment. We have to be very mindful of our 2-year-old brain when we're in the grocery store, out to dinner, places like that, because it's going to have all kinds of triggers. And that part of our brain says, put those cookies in my cart, get those chips. And it feels so good in the moment. And we have the anticipation of eating them, maybe in the car on the way home. So we have to really develop this habit of not going into the grocery store unprepared, and that we are clear on what we want to bring into our personal environment. So we can say no to something once in the store and not have to say no 100 times once we get it home. The fourth thing is to learn new ways to cope with discomfort. We have learned to buffer our feelings or any kind of uncomfortable feelings with food, or with watching too much TV, or sitting on the couch, or for some people it's gambling, as I said before, the things that bring us that instant gratification. We need to find other ways to find happiness and joy, and to find ways of coping with discomfort, with emotion, or anything else that may be showing up for us that we would otherwise buffer with food or other things. And so as we practice these things, it will get easier. We will be able to manage it in a healthier way, and we won't be at the mercy of that 2-year-old part of our brain. We can put the prefrontal cortex in charge, at least most of the time. So I hope that you will take the opportunity to identify the thoughts that you're having, to practice delayed gratification, to notice and embrace that discomfort, and be okay with it, and then to set up your environment so that you can find other ways of coping with discomfort that is not going to be harmful to you. Give it a try and let me know what you learn, and I will talk to you again soon.